What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Outside the Box Conversations. This is the second part of a two-part series with Dr. Michael Ryce. And in this conversation, we talk about AVACEN, which is a medical device that helps with arthritis, pain, and stiffness. And it's just fascinating how it works. If you've heard of AVACEN, Dr. Ryce does an incredible job of explaining what it is, how it heals. I've seen the device before. Both Dr. Rogers and Jenny, my mother, use it. So it's something that I wanted to learn more about selfishly. But, you know, even if you're not interested in AVACEN, it's a great conversation just about healing in general and how the body works. So I hope you guys get a ton out of this. I'm going to let you guys get to it. This is Dr. Michael Ryce on AVACEN. Okay, so the way AVACEN came up, just for the listeners out there who have no idea what we're talking about, there is this machine that's been in my parents' house. Of course, Dr. Rogers and Jenny, my mom. And my mother's been using this for her arthritis in her hand. So she's been sticking her hand inside of this. It's a bag that's inside of a machine, and it's called AVACEN. And right. From what I understand, you know a whole lot about AVACEN. Because I did such a terrible job of describing what it does, why don't you just tell the listeners what AVACEN is and what it does?
Sure. So the AVACEN, and the word AVACEN stands for Advanced Vascular Circulation Enhancement. It's an holistic wellness device. It's Class 2, cleared by the FDA. It's a heat therapy device that non-invasively infuses heat into the bloodstream. It's approved or cleared by the FDA for minor muscle and joint pain and stiffness, relief of joint pain associated with arthritis, muscle spasms, minor strains, sprains. In the EU and Canada, it's approved for fibromyalgia. They just completed a double-blind placebo-controlled study at University of California, San Diego, where they just found phenomenal results with diabetes and changing blood sugar and what happens with blood sugar. And basically, what the machine does is non-invasively injects heat into the hand. Your hand is a heat exchanger. You'll notice when you're on the spot or you get hot and sweaty, what happens? Your hand sweats. Yeah. That's one of your body's ways of pushing excess heat out of the body. Your palms will sweat. Sweat evaporates. Evaporating sweat cools and takes heat out of the structure. Or you'll notice that if you're cold, what do you spontaneously do? Rub your hands together. Creates friction, creates heat. There's a heat exchanger here. Absorbs the heat and literally distributes the heat throughout the whole body. And the whole body starts to warm up as a result of that. So what the AVACEN is, it's a device that weighs about 10 pounds. And as you said, there's it's actually a cuff in there. You actually put a mitt on your hand so that it seals against the cuff, and you insert your hand in the device. There's a heat plate in the device. Once the machine is ready, you take off all jewelry. You start the machine. Once it's ready, you hit the button. You put your hand in, and it creates a vacuum around your hand. The vacuum distends the blood vessels in your hand so that there is extra blood in the hand, and your hand is on a heat plate. So now it's infusing heat into the blood. Now, I can remember when I first heard about the AVACEN, which is about a year ago, I said, well, why don't I just put my hand in a bucket of hot water? Well, that's a great idea, except that your body has this thing called homeostasis. And when your body starts to warm up, it says, okay, we're shutting down the heat exchanger, no more heat. So you're not going to get much of anything into the blood by putting your hand in a bucket of hot water. The genius of the machine is it creates a vacuum that distends the blood vessels so that the heat exchanger can't shut down. And for anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes, you sit with your hand in this machine, and it's continuously pouring heat into the palm of the hand, into the heat exchanger.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Before? So what I heard was your body's natural reaction when, for example, you stick your hand into a hot bucket of water or whatever, your natural reaction is to go into homeostasis and cool off. Is that
right?
Okay. And then, so the difference
is AVACEN prevents that.
And the Avacyn doesn't allow your body to do what it wants to do.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct.
And thus you get the benefits of the heat.
Yes. When you put heat into the hand, into the blood in the hand, the blood leaves the hand and goes to the body. Within 3 minutes, it's back in the hand. 3 cycles of that, and the whole body is being treated by blood that is warmed by approximately 1 degree. When you warm the blood by 1 degree, it makes monumental changes. There's an interesting article that was in Newsweek, and it was reprinted in Discover magazine, and it was back in 2017, on a study at Loughborough University where they studied the benefits of a hot bath. And I mean, it was monumental, including and especially blood sugar, and what that heating of the blood does. So look up, Discover magazine, Loughborough University, or Newsweek. There will be articles in both places. And it's really profound what happens. But again, if you're sitting in a hot bath, first of all, there's several ways you can heat the blood. You can run for an hour. You can get yourself a good fever, an infection. You can sit in a hot sauna. You can sit in a hot tub or a bath. That's great. But in order to get the benefits that come from doing that, you have to do it pretty regularly. And adherence to that for most people isn't going to happen 2 or 3 times a day, or 4 times a day, or 5 times a day.
Right, you're not going to take 5 baths.
Exactly. Right. But you can sit while you're working in your office and have your hand in the Avacyn and have your blood being heated while you're comfortably working away on your computer. You're sitting watching TV. I do my radio show. Every day when I do my radio show, my hand's in the Avacyn for an hour, and I'm heating my blood for that time period. What happens when that occurs is that, well, first of all, if you said to somebody, well, this is how you're going to cure this in your body, and you said you get into the tub 4 times a day, get all sweaty, wash off sweat, all of that, compliance isn't going to be very high, or you got to get yourself a good infection, or you got to go sit in the sauna 4 times a day. The genius of the Avacyn is that it avoids the sweat response. You can get your blood heated up 1 degree with no sweating whatsoever. And sweat is a way that the body dissipates heat. So a lot of the energy that comes from, getting into a hot tub and getting hot and sweating is that it warms the water that's under the surface of the skin. The water comes through the skin as sweat. It's evaporated, and that cools the body. Doesn't happen with the Avacyn. What occurs, there's several things that occur, but one of the end results is when the blood temperature goes up 1 degree or so and the body says we need to dump some heat, the way that it dumps the heat is by opening microcirculation. There are about 60 billion capillaries in each body. The capillary is a blood vessel that's about the 10th the thickness of a hair. It's the only way that blood, oxygen, and nutrition gets to a cell. Veins and arteries have nothing to do with getting it into the cell. It's only the capillary that takes oxygen, nutrition into the cell and removes acidic carbon dioxide and acidic waste buildup from the cell. Most people, by the time they're 40, there's some degree of compromised microcirculation.
Is that why, I got 2 questions. Is that why as you get older, you sweat less?
Yes.
Or it's more difficult to sweat? My other question is there any way you could dumb that down just a little bit as far as the circulation and how the heat impacts that?
Well, the body says
it was a little over my head.
Yeah. The body says I want homeostasis.
Okay.
I'm at 98.6 and I want to stay there. You take me to 98.7 and I'm in an emergency. I have to get rid of this heat. If I sweat, I can get rid of it fairly easily. If I stay under the sweat radar, which is what the Avacyn does, then when the brain says we need to cool the body down, it does it by opening microcirculation and dumping that heat through microcirculation. So now compromised circulation is increased throughout the whole body, into the organs, into the muscles. And there's a change. The other couple of other major things that happen, Loughborough also showed that just heating, in a bathtub, changed nitric oxide production in the body. Nitric oxide is an important key to immunity. Nitric oxide is the way that smooth blood vessels are relaxed so that circulation opens. So it improves nitric oxide production, which again is another way to open circulation. And at the head of each of the 60 billion capillaries, there's what's called a precapillary orifice. So the capillary has these muscle fibers that are, you got an orifice in your throat. You can open it, you can close it. Most people live in this culture of fear and hostility in a state of fight, fright, flight, fear, freeze, which means that they're in a permanent dominant, where the nervous system is in complete contraction. The muscles are in contraction. And that's called sympathetic dominant. One of the things that the Avacyn does is it moves people out of the sympathetic state into the parasympathetic state. When you pour warm blood over these microfibers, these small blood vessels over the microcirculation, the warm blood causes the muscle to relax. That's one of the things the Avacyn is approved for as a medical device for the FDA. And incidentally, it's the only medical device I know of where everybody that uses it says, I love the side effects of my medical treatment. It's awesome. There are over 11 million treatments with no reported negative side effects with this device over the last 10 years.
So go ahead.
So when the muscle fibers relax, the capillary head opens. Now there's a way for the red blood cells to get in there, except for if you live in the SAD diet. I'm sure you're familiar, being in integrative medicine, with the SAD diet, standard American diet, junk oils, junk food, sugar, caffeine, nicotine, all the junk in the world. The red blood cells, there's a thing called, are you familiar with the term erythrocyte deformability?
I'm not.
So erythrocyte basically means a red blood cell. Deformability means it can bend. Red blood cells are bigger than the opening to the capillary. They have to be able to flex themselves to get in there. So even when the precapillary orifice is open, red blood cell, if it's somebody who's been eating a standard American diet and thinking a standard American way, the red blood cell can't flex enough to get in there. Warm it by 1 degree, and blood is what they call a non-Newtonian liquid. The most popular non-Newtonian liquid that we know of is called molasses. You'll notice we have a saying about molasses in February. What happens? It thickens. Non-Newtonian liquids thicken when they're cold. Red blood thickens when it's cold. It thins and it becomes less viscous when it's heated. Now the red blood cell, the improved erythrocyte deformability, allows the blood cell to flex, and now it can get into the capillary. Now it begins to deliver oxygen nutrition. If you have a cell, at least according to one theory, if you have a cell that's 5% deficient in oxygen, you have a cell that's in excruciating pain. And all you need is compromised microcirculation, and you've got all kinds of pain happening all over the structure. And the worse the microcirculation gets, the worse the pain becomes. Let the warm blood move in, the red blood cell flex, it goes in, and now it's delivering its payload of oxygen nutrition. And the waste products of metabolism, which are basically acidic carbon dioxide and acidic fluids, drive out oxygen. So once the cell becomes acidic, oxygen can't stay in the cell. So once you deliver that red blood cell and it drops off its load of oxygen, it now has room to pick up carbon dioxide, remove that acidic gas, and the byproducts of metabolism are basically acidic, and they tend to build up in the cell if there isn't proper circulation. It's like a stream. You get a stream where the flow slows down, and what happens? You get all kinds of mud and moss and everything gets gathered in there, and the water can't flow through. But once you improve that flow, then it starts to pick up the waste products of metabolism and move them out of the cell. Now the cell, having a proper supply of oxygen nutrition and being freed of acidic carbon dioxide and acidic waste, says, I'm a happy camper. And, as I say, the side effects that I hear people report are monumental. I have a friend that started to use the machine about 5 months ago. She was 78 years of age, and she had polio when she was a kid. She had post-polio syndrome. They've replaced 4 joints for her. When she started to use the machine, she had a shoulder pain that was continuous on a scale of 1 to 10, up there at about an 8. Continuous, 24/7, 365. They took her in, they did an x-ray, they says, bone on bone, we can't do it. We're going to do another, a joint replacement. 12 weeks after using the Avacyn, she was packing up her house and moving.
Wow.
No pain in her shoulder. And when she'd been working with a particular massage therapist for about 10 years. When she went to the massage therapist touched her legs and said, what have you been doing? There's no inflammation left in your legs. And it feels like you're starting to grow new muscle.
That's wild.
Well, that's the kind of side effect that people get. And I could go on and on and on. When I first started using the Avacyn, I had about 8 to 10 years earlier had injury, genetic propensity toward injury in my feet. My grandmother had diabetes. I can remember on her deathbed, they had taken her feet or her toes, the first half of her feet up to her ankles and up to her knees on both legs before she died. My mother's feet were extremely gnarly and distorted, just a mess. And my feet were starting to do that about 10 years ago. And I got where, early I was able to handle that and got past that. But for about 8 years, there had been a numbness in the tips of all 10 of my toes. I had presumed it was nerve damage, and, I get to live with that. The second time I put my hand in the Avacyn, that numbness was 80% gone. And 3 months later, there was has been no numbness in my toes for the last 10 months.
So it would really help with diabetic neuropathy.
Oh, well, I have another friend who's 74 who had diabetic neuropathy. He would be able to get up in the morning. He was actually the person who introduced me to the Avacyn. And he would get up in the morning and he said, I could work for about 2 hours. I was in excruciating pain. If I wanted to go up a set of stairs, I had to stop 3 times before I got to the top because of the pain in my feet. But I would be in excruciating pain. I would have to go and lay down and keep my feet up for the rest of the day. That was his life. He introduced me to it, so he'd been used about a month longer than I have. I was in Florida to see a physician who's bringing my forgiveness work into their practice. And on my way back, I stopped to see this friend, Patrick. It was about 10 o'clock at night. He has a Quonset hut on his property. He's a massage therapist. And he was working on building a new massage room. I arrived at 10 o'clock. He had started working on his Quonset hut at 8 o'clock in the morning and was still working on it at 10 o'clock at night with no pain in his feet. No pain in his feet. And this is a guy who, to get up a flight of stairs, had to stop 3 times.
So what for the people who are having these, just amazing results, what's a protocol you recommend, like an amount of time in the Avacyn?
Well, you can create an overload of toxic release if you move too quickly. So I suggest when someone's going to use the Avacyn, they start, especially if they've got a lot of symptoms going on, they start with their hand in the device for 10 minutes twice a day, morning and evening. Do that for a couple, 3 days. As long as there's no Herxheimer reaction, then go ahead and do 15 minutes. A few days, do 20, do 30. I started out like that, and I now, after about a year, use the machine 2.5 hours a day. Usually in the morning, my meditation time is about an hour. I meditate with my hand in the machine. My radio show is an hour a day. I do my show with my hand in the machine. And then in the evening, last thing at night, I do about another half hour. That's my normal routine now. And I'm watching, what I'm experiencing is what I would call the symptoms of aging, one by one, just disappearing from my body. I had I can tell you exactly when it was because it was the week my daughter was born. She's just turned 40. And she wouldn't like me saying that. but when she was born, I lived in Atlanta, and right across the street, there was this beautiful forest, and a developer came in, bought the property, was wiping out all the trees to put in a mall. He's hauling the trees off to be burned at the dump. I said, hey, can I cut some of it? He said, take all you want. I don't have to pay to burn it then. So I went out and got myself a big hefty chainsaw, and I went out and started cutting wood. I cut about 14 cord of wood in 2 weeks and injured my spine. 40 years ago, there's been pain in my spine for 40 years. Not terrible, not horrible, but it was always there whenever I went to a chiropractor or massage. There was always, work on that spot. Let's see if we get that spot loosened up. About 6 months ago, so that's after 4.5, 5 months on the Avacyn, I woke up one morning, totally, completely. Pain that had been there for 40 years is gone.
So it can help with back pain too, because my dad has back pain, and obviously he's super interested in the Avacyn, but it helps with that.
I've seen person after person after person with back pain, even in some cases, fairly severe back pain, use it for 2 or 3 days and their back pain's gone. Yeah.
Wow. And I do have a question about homeostasis.
Again, if you've got a 5% reduction in oxygen, the cell's in excruciating pain. What the Avacyn does is restores oxygen flow to the cell throughout and it's a whole body treatment. And
so it's not just the hand.
Without side effects. Again, the side effects are, wow, this is great.
So, we've talked about homeostasis, but homeostasis is a good thing, right? Like talking to somebody who's ignorant, like homeostasis is a good reaction of the body, but we're not wanting homeostasis in this one situation. Am I totally off?
Actually, if you're at total homeostasis, you'll probably be dead within 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you don't really want total homeostasis. Yes, you want the body to maintain its balance, but it is going through the energetic patterns that it goes through that is life. And, in my work, what I've come up with as a definition for life is love flowing through a cell. When the active presence of love does not flow through a cell, when it's inhibited, the cell is now unplugged from its power supply, and it's only a matter of time before it's going to die. So what we're looking to do in this case is to interrupt what the body would create as a certain level of homeostasis by shutting down the heat exchange in the hand, using the vacuum to distend the blood vessels so that we can keep pouring it through. So the whole body gets this warmed blood treatment. Nitric oxide, whole body. Erythrocyte deformability, whole blood supply. Precapillary orifice, open, 60 billion capillaries. It just changes everything. I mean, I've come to the point where I see it as the most important wellness device that I have run into in 50 years of working in the medical field. And, there's just nothing else that can do it.
Now, is this accessible for everybody? Because I know people are going to ask, is this device, do they find it in medical practices? Can they, I know there's, home devices as well. What's your recommendations for that?
There are medical practices where people use the device in the practice, and people can be treated. There are massage therapists that use it. There's a professional device that's available for that use, and it comes with licensing for a practitioner being able to charge for it. Then there's a home device that is not licensed for practitioners that people buy and take into their homes and use it on their own. And it's something that every member in the family can use. And it's again, it's approved or cleared by the FDA for medical treatment, for making medical claims, because they've proven, yes, this works. And it is a relatively inexpensive device for that purpose. I don't know if we can talk about price, we can, but.
That is amazing. I think, is it avacen.com is where they can find it? I believe I pulled it up here. It is avacen.com.
Information from avacen.com, but the person who I first was introduced to you folks through, Carolyn Anderson, is a medical massage therapist in Bristol, Tennessee, and she's a distributor for the device, as I am, and I'm here to support her. So if anybody wants to catch up with Carolyn, it would be Avacen Medical. I think her site is avacenmedical.com/Carolyn Anderson.
And we will link that up to the in the show notes.
Yeah, okay. And we have some discount codes for people too that we can apply to save people some money if they're interested.
Will you send me those discount codes, and we'll put those in our social channels as well. Dr. Ryce, I want to be respectful of your time, so we're gonna call it there. Where can people find you at? This has been such a fascinating conversation.
Okay, so my website is www.whyagain.org. You can download a free copy of my book on the website. It's actually out of print right now, but you can usually find used copies on Amazon or on eBay. You can download our app, just by going into your app store and putting in the words Heartland, all one word, HEARTLAND, Aramaic, ARAMAIC, forgiveness. You can download the app there. Through there, you can also access our website. And 5 days a week from 1 till 2 o'clock Eastern time, you can call the number 5. We're an internet radio show, so people can do it on their computers. But most people, because they have unlimited long distance these days, just call into the show and listen to the show on their phone. And the call-in number is 563-999-3581. So you can call. And once that number answers, you're listening to our show. And then if you have a question, just push 1. My wife runs the switchboard and she'll introduce you, and you and I will be having a conversation. Whoever's out there, we're delighted. And I'm happy to do this anytime. I mean, this is what my life is dedicated to. I spent 50 years. But my wife and I have traveled. Been on the road now for a little better than 40 years, been doing this work for almost 50. And we've traveled. We actually did our travel workshops free. We paid our own expenses, and we went anywhere on the globe that we were invited. And 2 years ago, my father-in-law became ill to the point where he couldn't live on his own anymore. And the family was ready to say nursing home, and we said no. So we stopped traveling. I actually live somewhere for the first time in 40 years, and that's pretty awesome. I go back to the same bed every night for 2 years now. It's awesome. And so we're kind of hunkered down here in Bristol, Virginia. And so we're available. And, anytime you want to have another conversation about forgiveness or the Avacyn or, anything that fits. I mean, we do a whole series of workshops. Why is this happening to me again? Healing through relationships, communications. You hear what I think I said? Purpose, personal power, and commitment. Empowered to heal. Hands-on energy field work. Mind shifters. Still point breathing. We got about 16 or 17 different workshops that have come out of the core work of forgiveness.
That is just amazing. And we have to have you on for a follow-up, because I got the Avacyn. There's so many more things we can touch on. But Dr. Michael Ryce, this has been a pleasure. It's a pleasure to get you on the show. Thank you so much.
Delighted. Blessings.
Guys, this has been Outside the Box Conversation. I am your host, Ben Rogers. We've been with Dr. Michael Ryce. Thank you so much for being with us this week. And as always, we will see you guys next time.
No, don't go away.